Bingo. Okay, so we'll start with ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there are two types, inattention and our good old hyperactivity. So inattention, we need six or more symptoms of inattention for someone up to the age of 16 years old. And once you get past that and 17 and older, we're looking at five or more symptoms. So you have to have more when it's a child, a little less when it is transitional age youth up to adulthood. And the symptomology has to be present for at least 6 months. That's a key thing to keep in mind too, is that it needs to be happening for 6 months and beyond what is expected for the developmental level. So young kids, there's going to be some type of expectation for them to have some hyperactivity or a little bit of like fidgetiness, because why? That's just their developmental range and they're curious and wanting to roam about. So the symptoms that we're looking at here is there's not a lot of close attention to detail, or they make careless mistakes in school, work, or other activities, such as, let's say there's something that could put them in danger and they're like, oh wow, I didn't even see that, and they almost run into it, or they do run into it. Or in school, they're making mistakes on schoolwork, so their grades have plummeted, when otherwise, if they paid a little bit more attention to what they were doing, it could have been mitigated and actually been on path for them to do well. So often holding attention during task is very, very difficult. So they're very fidgety around things. They're bouncing from task to task, doing many different things, not really ever finishing them. And it seems like they're not listening to the rules. So they just want to start the activity right away without even knowing what's going on. So when the activity does start, they might be asking, and so what does this mean? Or how are we supposed to do this? So it's very difficult for them to understand the activity and make it enjoyable for themselves because they lag behind on knowing what is actually about to happen. So often it's difficult for them to listen to people. So let's say they're running around the classroom and someone's like, stop. And then they just keep doing it. And it's like getting amped up. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even listening to you, or didn't even hear you. You didn't even give me a warning. So it's often difficult for them to organize things as well, whether that's task, activities. So this could lead them to overcommitting to things, which would make them find it difficult to pay attention to things as well, which then creates the cycle again, which is a previous criteria of not being able to hold attention. So they avoid things they dislike, or are reluctant to do things that take great mental effort over a long period of time, such as household chores, schoolwork, being at work, hanging out with a family member that they know that they're going to have to do a lot of things. They just like to relax, or they just like to avoid things because they know that they can't pay attention to things and they don't want it to mitigate or take away from their experience or make them look negative or less than to people around them. They will often lose things necessary for tasks or schoolwork or work. So such as like pen, pencils, calculator, household items such as their keys, their cell phone, their wallets, coffee cups, etc. And they're just like, wow, I can't ever seem to remember where I put things. They lose things quite often, which then again makes them all over the place and not able to focus on particular tasks or completing things without actually being able to stay on task with them. And which then leads them to be often forgetful in daily tasks. So a key thing, an easy way to remember somebody that has inattention is not able to keep close eye onto close details, or they make careless mistakes, can't really hold attention to things that they want to engage in. It's difficult for them to listen to rules. They find it difficult to listen to other people when spoken to. They're not able to organize things or keep tasks straight. They avoid things that they dislike, so that way they don't have to expound a lot of mental effort around the things that they engage in. They're not able to keep things in order, again, which makes them lose necessary things for tasks and activities, schoolwork, materials, pen, pencils, house, keys, calculator, cell phone, wallet, all of these things. Distracted by a lot of things around them, and they are often forgetful about daily activities that they have to complete. And again, 6 or more symptoms for someone 16 years or younger, or 5 or more symptoms for someone that is 17 years or older. And the duration here, again, is 6 months, which then leads us into our sub component, or the other type of it, hyperactivity and impulsivity. And there's no change among the amount of symptoms as well as the length of time. So ADHD, there's no trick here. You need 6 or more symptoms for someone that is 16 years or younger, or 5 or more for someone 17 and older. And again, the diagnostic time is 6 months. So let's get into these symptoms. So the person often fidgets or taps their hands, feet, or squirms in their chair, whether that's twiddling with a pen, whether that's tapping a desk, whether that's fidgeting with papers, whether that's just squirming about because they just have a lot of energy and it seems as if they're operated by a motor. They often leave their seats in situations where it would otherwise be expected or not expected. So let's say we're taking an exam or test and they just start getting up and walking about, talking to people, roaming around, walking around, and everyone else in class or in the exam is like, what the heck is this person doing? So, or they'll often climb on things or engage in things that other people would look and say, why is that person doing that right now? We're supposed to be like relaxed and focused. Or could just simply be restlessness, which again, be doing many tasks at the same time and just trying to accomplish a lot of things and not able to really finish any of them. Often unable to play or take part in leisure activities quietly, or they bounce from task to task. So everything they're doing, they're like announcing to people like, wow, look what I'm doing, or wow, that's super cool over there. Let me try this game, or let me try this activity, or let me try this. So it's like ping pong ball all about, and you're just like, wow, this person is quote unquote bouncing off of the walls. Often seems to be on the go and is driven by a motor. And often talks excessively with or without direction. So they may start talking about something, then start diverting over here and saying like, wow, this is a really cool plant, or then go over here and say like, wow, this is what I did at the baseball game, and yeah, this is the video game that I played last night, and oh yeah, I did a spelling test, and my shoes are untied. Yeah, we're having pizza for lunch, so it's just all over the place. Just so very difficult to keep on task and like follow what the person's saying, or they'll often blurt out answers to questions before they're even finished. They have an angst and jump right into it and don't have the patience to stick with what is going on and stay within the activity. They always want more, and they always are looking for the next thing because it's not fulfilling to them and it doesn't keep their attention very long. They'll often get into trouble when wading into lines. So they are like trying to jump in front of everybody. They're just like, why are we waiting here? I just don't get it. And then they might have temper tantrums or like behaviors associated around them in this. And they often have trouble waiting their turn in conversation. So they may interrupt or intrude on other people, whether they're talking to somebody, whether they're playing a game. They're like, I don't want to wait. I'm just going to walk into the game, or I'm just going to engage in this activity because I need to. I just have so much energy. I'd be better at this. So an easy way to remember this is picture somebody bouncing around like a bouncy ball, not able to stay seated, not able to stay in one spot, touching everything around them, climbing around everything. So the ball is like bouncing off of counters, of walls, ceiling, floor, and they're not able to keep things quiet. So that's like hitting into things and making noise around you, and often no direction with where it's going. And then not an easy way to remember the last ones, but someone that's just like super angsty, blurting out, cutting in front of people, just trying to prove that they know what the problem is or what the solution is, and just not able to wait their turn. So in addition to these criteria, whether it's inattention or hyperactivity, impulsivity, there is an age caveat and or requirement. So all of the things that I went over have to be before the age of 12. They have to be present at least a little bit before the age of 12. So oftentimes we would like to see somebody diagnosed with it before the age of 12, but it's not impossible, again, to be diagnosed later on in life. Because remember, it just requires less criteria. Another key thing is that it has to be present in multiple settings in their life, such as maybe at home you're just all over the place, and then you're at work and you're all over the place. Or you're in school and you're all over the place. When you're with other people, you're all over the place. So that way it's just not at school because maybe they just don't like school, or maybe it's not just at work because you're trying to be driven and accomplish a lot of things at work. There's clear evidence that the symptoms interfere or reduce the quality of the person's life, work functioning, or social capabilities. And the symptoms are not better explained by another mental health disorder, such as a mood disorder, anxiety disorder, dissociative, or personality disorder, and not present due to psychotic or schizophrenia symptomology. Not that they can really mimic it, but some people may think it is like mania. But remember, when in doubt, stick with your gut and what you know. And there are 3 different types of presentations. There's a combined presentation, so you have inattention and hyperactivity/impulsivity. And enough symptoms are met for both of them. So you have to have 6 and 6, or 5 and 5, and it has to be again for the last 6 months. And then predominantly inactivity means that you would have 6 criteria for inactivity, or 5 criteria for inactivity. Again, 6 is for 16 years and younger, and 5 is for 17 years and older. And again, for the last 6 months. And then predominantly hyperactivity would be 6 criteria for 16 and younger, 5 for 17 and older. And that would be in the last 6 months as well. The next diagnosis is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. And the best way to remember this one is that their mood is not regulated, so they're angry all the time about no apparent reason. So there's recurrent temper outbursts manifested by verbal and or behavioral actions that can cause impact that is beyond what is normally expected in this situation. Because there are going to be situations in a person's life that they can become angry and or have some type of reaction that would create some type of verbal rage or physical altercations. But the verbal is verbal rages such as cussing at people, yelling at people, or fussing at people over something very, very small. It's just like a straight up bomb all the time. You're just like, wow, that's kind of weird. I don't know what set that person off, but maybe it's just something like lack of sleep or whatever. And then physical is physical aggression, property destruction, or someone trying to harm people where it's not otherwise warranted. Like someone may look at you the wrong way and you're trying to club them across the head, or they take something off your table and you just plow them. And people are like, whoa, oh, you said that person could use it. And it was like, no, when I said they could. So their behavior is out of proportion in intensity or duration for the situation at hand. Someone may be angry for like a couple days on something, and it's like, oh, okay, that's understandable. Well, this person is angry for like weeks at a time or months at a time even. So the outbursts occur on average 3 or more times per week. So it's not just like one outburst a week. It's like multiple times in a single week over multiple different things. And the mood outbursts are persistently irritable, angry for most of the day, every day. This is the type of person where you're just like, wow, it doesn't seem like this person's ever happy. And everything sets them off, even little things that they enjoy. And other people are able to see that the person is angry. So the child is very, very angry all the time. So it's not just in one setting, it's all the time. So your teachers are saying this, your friends are saying this, your parents are saying this, your coaches or pastor, what you have, you are saying that, well, it looks like you're very, very angry all the time. So criteria A through E must be present for 12 months or more. So it's over a year's span, which would quantify to like 150 days or so. Because remember, it has to be 3 or more times per week. So 52 weeks, 3 times, it's 156. So it's how many days that someone would have to be angry, which is the majority of the days. And throughout the time, the individual has not had a period of at least 3 months without the absence of symptoms. So within this, so someone has to have at least 9 months in a row with it, actually 10 months in a row with all of the symptomology within this. And again, that's them being angry all the time. That's with them having out of proportion with the situation type anger. This is them just being angry and having 3 more episodes. And then the criteria must be seen in 2 or more settings, again, at home, school, church, in the community, etc. The diagnosis should not be made for someone who is less than 6 or over the age of 18 years old. So by history, the age of onset must be met before the age of 10. So if you encounter somebody and they're a new case, what they're describing to you must be before the age of 10. You can't come in and be like, oh yeah, I've been doing this since 3 months ago, and they're like 13 years old. It would not be this, it'd be some other type of disorder, such as like conduct disorder. So there have not been a distinct time where the symptoms have lasted longer than a single day and not met criteria for manic or hypomanic episode. And the behavior does not occur in an episode of major depression, is not better explained by another mental health disorder. Bipolar, autism, PTSD, separation anxiety, persistent depressive disorder, etc. So an easy way to remember this one, it's just they're angry and it's disrupting their way to regulate themselves. So they're always angry. So there's no way for them to have some type of norm. And they're physically and verbally aggressive towards other people in situations where it otherwise would not be warranted. And this cannot coexist with ODD, intermittent explosive disorder, or bipolar. So it's either one of those. So can just be out of this portion. They're not attributable to physiological effects of alcohol or other substances or a medical condition. And like I said, I'm not going to cover all the disorders in all these different categories, but I'll try my best. And then what I don't do in the session, I can swoop in the other session. So the depressive disorders, we'll start with major depressive disorder. So this is 5 or more symptoms being present in the last 2-week period and represent a change from a previous functioning, and at least one of the following are met. Depressed mood, loss of interest or getting less pleasure from things previously enjoyed, which often trigger you to say, are there other symptoms available? So we need to have one of those and then 4 others of these. So the symptoms here, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by feelings of sadness, emptiness, hopelessness, or others feeling that you're isolated from them, or that you're tearful and not your normal self. Some people may say like, wow, you seem a little more off, is everything okay type deal. And if that's persistent over a 2-week period, then it can quantify depression, clinical depression that is. And then the second is diminished interest or lack of pleasure in almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. So let's say I really, really enjoy doing study groups, but more recently, someone's like, wow, it seems like this is just you going through the motions. You don't really enjoy this anymore. You're kind of sad when you have to do these, or you're like frustrated. So something that someone used to really, really enjoy, they're just like, blah, this is dumb. Can't believe I'm still doing this. Or what's the point of doing this? The third, significant weight loss or significant weight gain within this. So change of around 5% of the person's body weight. So either they're eating more or eating less. Typically, we're looking at eating less here. So if someone is not having loss of appetite, isolating them from themselves, just avoiding meals, that would be a trigger to be just to know that they may be depressed. And then psychomotor agitation or delay. So someone's moving quicker or someone's moving way slower, and it's like they're just going through the motions again. So that would trigger. And then fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. They become very tired very quickly without exerting a lot of energy. And it's just like coming out of nowhere. It's like, wow, you have spurts of energy and then just drawbacks of like no energy. They feel worthless or have excessive inappropriate guilt or remorse for things that they have done. So this may look like wow, I can't believe I did this. I'm so stupid. Like those that were in the session prior, they heard that I got that ticket. So if I had MDD around this, I may be like, oh, I'm so worthless. I can't believe this. I'm a piece of crap. Of course, no one really cares about me. I can't believe I did this again. This is dumb. I am less than everyone possible in this. And within this, we have lack of concentration, motivation around completing tasks, or we're just very indecisive and not knowing what we're supposed to be doing within this. And it's very difficult for us to stay on task around all of this. So let's say I am doing this study group and then I start paying attention to what my roommate's doing in the kitchen, or I start thinking about other things and then I lose my train of thought. Or I'm just like, wow, I'm going to do all this stuff on the list. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I don't get any of it done. And I'm like, wow, I'm so worthless, and there's no point in even doing this. Or there's recurrent thoughts of death, not just fear of dying, but actually wanting to die. Thinking, wow, if I was dead, no one would even care. Or what would it look like if I was dead? So like, or wow, there's a rope in the store in here. If I go in here and grab it and hang myself. Or what if I jumped off the school bus? Or what if I jumped in front of the school bus? Just ways of wanting to die. And they actually have a serious plan of what to do, but they always do not need to have a plan. It could just be fleeting thoughts of wanting to kill themselves. So remember, you have to have 5 of those 9. And the symptoms cause a clinically significant impact on the person's functioning. The episode is not attributable to physiological or health conditions or the use of substances. And the occurrence of major depressive disorder is not better explained by another mental health disorder, or it's not attributable to a manic or hypomanic episode, and the person is looking through the lens of depression. And when we go into that, we go into persistent. So persistent is MDD, but over a longer period of time. And the easiest way to remember the two is MDD is 2 weeks, persistent is 2 years. So it's not like the person is going to have MDD one day and then persistent the next day. It's over a long period of time. So the depressed mood is for most days than not. And it's either based on the subjective account of the symptoms are observed for over 2 years. So if the person's like, I've been depressed since 2017, chances are they're looking at a persistent depressive disorder. But for kids and adolescents, we're looking at least 1 year. So be easier to remember that, because when you're a child, you're less in age, so it takes less time for them to get it. So remember, MDD, 2 weeks, persistent, 2 years, or 1 year for adolescents or children. And the criteria are very, very similar to MDD. So the symptoms are poor appetite or overeating. If you remember, the MDD criteria was significant weight gain or weight loss, and then insomnia or hypersomnia. And MDD had some sleep disturbance such as insomnia or hypersomnia nearly every day. And then low energy or fatigue, and MDD had losing energy or fatigue or lost energy very quickly. Low self-esteem, so feeling less about yourself. Poor concentration, and remember, MDD had lack of concentration. So very, very similar criteria. So that's why it's always synonymous when looking at the two. And feelings of hopelessness within it. So it's either during the 1 or 2 year period. Again, 1 is for adolescents and children, and 2 is for adults. That has a clinically significant impact, and it has not been absent for more than 2 months. So you can be absent for 1 month and sift back to that. So MDD must be consistently present for 2 years to change into persistent. It can't be off and on type deal, because then that would be MDD. And there's no inclination of mania or hypomanic episodes, and no cyclothymic disorder is met. And cyclothymic is where you have very, 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 very quick cycles, not as much depression, and a lot more mania over long periods of time. And the disturbance is not better explained by persistent psychoaffective disorder, which is major depressive, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. All linked in the same. Schizophrenia is not met. Delusional disorder is not met. And the symptoms are not attributable to physiological effects or substance use disorders or medical conditions. And the symptoms cause a clinically significant impact on the person's functioning. And it's not just something that shows up and they're still able to operate about their day. Because if that's the case, then we are looking at something different, and we have to get the different facts to align and associate ourselves with that. Any questions so far on MDD, PDD, ADHD, or anything along those lines? And if you don't have any questions, just type no into the chat. Okay. So then we'll roam into our anxiety disorders. So we'll start off with generalized anxiety disorder. And the main thing to keep in mind is it's 6 months long. So the main diagnosing thing here is 6 months long, and the person has to have at least 3 of them, or 1 for children. So that is a key thing to keep in mind, is it's either 3 or 1 for children / adolescents. So the criteria is restlessness or feelings of being on edge. So being able to react at any point in time, or jumping around, just poof, like hypervigilant type deal. Being easily fatigued. So doing something that would not be super strenuous for you normally and just being drained, just falling and hitting a wall. You have difficulty concentrating, or thoughts moving in multiple directions at the same time, or mind is just straight up going blank. So let's say I was talking about generalized anxiety disorder and I was like, oh wow, what was I just saying? Oh yeah. Irritability, you're shouting at people, starting fights with people, getting aggressive with people over things that you normally wouldn't. Muscle tension, so just being super keyed up or tense about everything all the time. And then sleep disturbance, not being able to sleep, difficulty falling, staying, or getting up in the middle of the night about things. Maybe you're studying for this exam and saying like, holy crap, can't even sleep, can't believe it. I don't know if I'll be able to handle this. And it's difficult for you to control your worry. So the anxiety has a clinically significant impact on the person's functioning. You're trying to operate through your day and there's some type of impact in that way. And disturbance is not better attributed to another mental health disorder, substance use, or intoxication or withdrawal, and or medical condition. So key thing to keep in mind here is you're anxious about multiple things in general, not one particular thing. And that's 6 months. You need to have 3 criteria, or 1 for children. And then we get into separation anxiety disorder. So this is where it's developmentally inappropriate or excessive fear or anxiety concerning the separation from they're attached to, very close to, or there's perceived separation from somebody that they're close to or attached to. And it's quantified by 3 of the following symptoms. So it's 1 through 8, and you only need 3 of them. So First one is recurrent or excessive distress when anticipating or experiencing separation from home, from a major attachment figure in their life. So let's say a kid's ready to go to grandma's house, they start freaking out and losing their minds because they fear that they're not going to be able to see their parents again or that they're not going to be reunified. Persistent and excessive worry about losing a major attachment figure in their life, whether it's they're going to get harmed, they're going to get ill, they're going to die, or something disastrous is going to happen to them. So they need to keep sight of them and try to protect them as much as they possibly can to avoid this perceived loss. A persistent or excessive worry about experiencing an unexpected event. They're getting lost, they're getting kidnapped, they're going to have an accident that would prevent them from being able to get back to their parent. And they always want to stay around their major attachment figure, the people that they're close to, because they do not want to lose that connection, or they don't want to lose the chance of having that person around as much as they possibly can. Persistent or excessive refusal or reluctance to go to school, work, or anything away from the attachment figure for the fear of separation and that they won't be reunified. Persistent and excessive fear or reluctance about being alone or without their major attachment figure at home or in another setting. There's persistent reluctance or refusal to sleep away from home or go to sleep without being near their major attachment figure, or fear that they could be harmed, or fear that someone could harm them, or their significant or major attachment figure because they're not around to help. They have repeated nightmares involving the theme of being separated from their major attachment figure. So there's things that are preventing them from being able to focus on things around them, or they have nightmares with their attachment figure getting hurt, they're getting hurt, or things that would make it so that they're not able to be around them. And repeated complaints of physical symptoms, headache, stomach ache, nausea, or vomiting when separated from their major attachment figure, or when an anticipated separation occurs. And the fear, anxiety, and avoidance is persistent at least 4 weeks in children and adolescents, and typically at least 6 months in adults. So huge gap in between those. But remember, when they're a child, they have less need for time to go by for it to be clinically significant. And the disturbance causes clinically significant impact on their functioning. And the disturbance is not better explained by another mental health disorder, such as refusing to leave home because of excessive resistance to change, such as seen in autism, delusion, or hallucination disorders. So, major and easy way to remember this is they fear being separated from their caregiver. They fear their caregiver getting separated from them, as well as they fear or have constant thoughts and worries about something preventing them from being attached to their caregiver or staying attached to their caregiver. And again, we're looking at 4 weeks or 6 months, which then leads us into selective mutism, which is a consistent failure to speak in a specific social setting where there's an expectation for speaking. So let's say you aren't speaking to other kids at school, you aren't speaking to your teacher, or if you're at work and you have this, you're not speaking to other people that would otherwise help you get your job accomplished. So let's say I have a huge work project that I have to get done, and I'm not talking to the people, my team members, because I don't think that they like me, or I just don't see a need to. And the disturbance interferes with my educational or occupational achievement, because let's say I don't get a promotion at work because I'm not communicating with other people, because I fear that they're not going to like me or that it's not going to go anywhere, so I just prevent myself from doing this. And the duration here is at least 1 month, but a caveat here is it cannot be the first month of a new job, school, or social situation. because it's expected for people to have some type of reluctance or shyness about them. And the disturbance is not better explained by communication disorder. So the child does not have onset fluency disorder, meaning they have stutters or inability to speak, and it doesn't occur exclusively in the course of autism, because autism is associated with lack of social communication or connection, and schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders are not exhibited. They don't have a fear of the person harming them or someone harming them harming another person, and that is not to be mixed up with social anxiety disorder. This is where someone has where they'll communicate in other situations, but other social situations they will not. They select which ones they will communicate in and prevent themselves from communicating in others. And then social anxiety disorder. So this is a marked fear or anxiety about one or more social situation which the individual is exposed to possible scrutiny by others. So this may be me doing this study group. This may be you guys talking amongst each other in this study group. This may be you talking to somebody at work or giving a speech at work or presenting information when you were in college, or you have a guest lecture at the university and you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm totally going to mess up. People are going to hate me. No one's going to like me. And this, I'm going to get booed off type deal. Or you're meeting other people in social situations that you haven't done. So this may be you in a social situation and you feel that people aren't going to like you because they're going to watch you eat or they're going to watch you drink and you don't like the way that you do it. So you avoid that as well. Or, like I said, performing in front of people, such as giving a speech or doing this study group. In the children, it must occur in peer situations and not in interactions with adults, because most children are taught not to engage with people that they do not know that are adults because it's danger. And the individual fears that he or she will not act in a manner that will be negatively evaluated, or they fear that they won't be able to do positive interactions, thus will be scrutinized and isolated. So they will show anxiety symptoms. They feel like they can be viewed negatively as well. So if I have sweaty palms or shaking my leg or tapping, I may fear that people think that I'm an idiot for doing so. So it makes me more anxious. So I'm anxious about being anxious, and then I'm thinking that people are going to judge me for being anxious. So I become more anxious. And then the social situation almost always provokes the anxiety or fear. So it's not just particular settings or particular things that make me anxious. It's all social settings around particular themes. And in the children, the fear or anxiety may be expressed by crying, tantrums, freezing, clinging to their caregivers or significant people, shrinking down to levels or the floor, or failing to speak in social situations. And then the social situations are avoided or endured with intense fear or anxiety. So the person may still push through and do what they feel is right around that activity, but they ultimately will not do the activity. Or if they do it, they're just super shy and just grit through it and be like, can't believe that happened. And the fear anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the social situation. So if I was nervous during this, I may think, oh my gosh, I need to leave this apartment. Let me just jump off my balcony so that way I will not be able to talk anymore. That way people won't expect me to be able to present in front of them. Very, very disproportionate and very exotic reaction to it. So the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is persistent, with typically lasting at least 6 months or more. So most anxiety disorders, you're going to be looking at the 6-month mark. So we have GAD, social anxiety, separation anxiety, all exhibiting longer periods of time within them. And then the fear or anxiety causes clinically significant impact. So if you haven't gotten tired of me saying that it causes a clinically significant impact, then we're good. Because most disorders say that, besides like bipolar 2 disorder. And the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is not attributable to a physiological effect of substance use or another medical condition. And the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is not better explained by another mental health disorder, such as panic disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, or autism spectrum disorder. And if a medical condition better explains the condition, such as Parkinson's, obesity, etc., the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is clearly beyond what is normally expected within those diagnoses, which then leads us into our trauma-related disorders. So acute stress disorder, acute tends to be a shorter length of time than PTSD, which is its parent or predication after that. So the first thing that we have to keep in mind is that someone has to be exposed to one or more of the following. They directly experienced a traumatic event, they witnessed a traumatic event, they learned about a traumatic event, or they have repeated exposure to adverse reminders of a learned or experienced traumatic event. So once we get into that, we have to have a presence of 9 or more of the 5 following categories. So it varies based on the category, what we're looking at here, but intrusion is recurrent, involuntary, and distressing memories of a traumatic event. And in children, it may be mimicked in play, such as they may be having sexual actions with the toys that they're playing with, or they're having violence with their toys that is beyond what is normally expected. And within that, there's recurrent distressing dreams in which the content or affect of the dream is related to the events that they witnessed, heard within that. But within children, it could just be frightening dreams without particular content. So they may be having excessive nightmares or nightmares that are repeated over long periods of time. They may exhibit dissociative reactions such as flashbacks or basically trying to escape mentally from their situation. They may physically be there, but mentally they just disconnect so that way they don't have to witness or be a part of what they're actually doing. And this is where the person may experience events or sensations from the traumatic event that cause them to lose awareness in the present. So let's say I had heard a loud noise with my apartment, and I had been witnessed a gunshot or witnessed like a lot of violence within my days. Then it may trigger me, and I may just start heart beating and stuff like that. So yeah, at my agency, my second job, I had a client like attack their mom in front of me, which caused me to have like a very like dissociative type thing of like hyperventilating, like becoming super sweaty, like wanting to pass out type deal due to like things that I have experienced. So the dissociative brings in just this like unreal sensation of being like, oh wow, I didn't even know that existed. You'll have intense or prolonged psychological distress or marked physiological reactions in response to symbols, locations, reminders, or anything that resembled the traumatic event that you had gone through or had witnessed. You will experience a negative mood or persistent inability to experience positive emotions. You're not able to experience happiness, joy, satisfaction, reciprocate love from other people, as well as when something positive does happen, you always wait for quote unquote the shoe to drop. So that way you don't ever get too content or happy about it. You'll experience dissociative symptomology. So if you notice, some of these criteria kind of overlap here, but as we're diagnosing, can become very, very tricky. But the dissociative symptoms or an altered sense of reality of one's surroundings or oneself. So basically seeing yourself from another perspective or having the sensation of quote unquote being outside of your body. It's an inability to remember an important aspect of a traumatic event, typically due to dissociative defense mechanisms. And it's not caused by a head injury or the use of substance use. So you may not be able to remember important things about an event, or you may just have holes in the situation or like retrain or like say things that didn't actually happen during the event to make yourself feel better about the event or the person that you're interacting with. Avoidance symptoms, you put efforts to avoid distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings closely related to a traumatic event. So you may start joking about things, you may engage activities, you may flee certain areas or situations that remind you of things, or you just may not even go around anything at all. So if you had a traumatic thing that happened around like a certain block or certain location, such as a bar, or if there's ever alcohol around and there was a negative thing around you and you see it, it may trigger you. Certain scents, certain objects, etc. And you make efforts to avoid external reminders. Like I said, certain people may trigger it off, like certain places, certain things, certain conversations, activities, or objects. And they may just be advertently like introduced, and you just react in a way without knowing and be like, wow, I didn't even know that would trigger me, or like, wow, what about this triggered me? And arousal symptomology. So you will exhibit like sleep disturbances. So typically falling asleep, staying asleep, or restless sleep or insomnia. You may go to sleep, pop up in the middle of the night. You may have nightmares. You may find it difficult to stay calm in certain situations. You have hypervigilance or being alert of your surroundings, and you're easily startled. So you'll just like jump up and just be like, people will be like, what the heck happened? Why are you doing this? Like, what's going on? Type deal. You have problems with concentration or staying on task, or have multiple thoughts at the same time. So you have your mind racing, not a whole lot of things being able to slow down. And you have an exaggerated startle response. You hear a loud noise and you jump right out of your skin and not even know why. And you will have like irritability or like aggressive behavior. And the duration of the symptoms are present from 3 days to 1 month after the traumatic event. So less than 30 days is typically what I tell people when it's like this. And if it's over 30 days, we are going to be looking at post-traumatic stress disorder. So within this, the criteria is kind of the same, but there's actually caveats on how many symptoms that you have to have from each of the categories. But the key thing to remember that it is basically the same criteria. The person has to have it for over 30 days or more. And the breakdown of how many symptoms that you have to have within it is going to be totally different within it. So, and the main thing to keep in mind is it's the same criteria, and it's easy to get swept away. So let's say we have a question that says this person was at a traumatic event that was 6 weeks ago, and they've been having reactions ever since. It'd be post-traumatic stress disorder. But let's say we had a question that said 3 weeks ago, it'd be acute stress disorder. So that is the main difference there. And an example of this would be a coffee cup witnessed the death of his father 2 months ago. And since he has been feeling down, avoiding the park that his father was murdered at, when Coffee tries to sleep at night, he will have nightmares and find it difficult to go back to sleep after having them. Coffee will easily be started by loud noises, especially those that sound like a gunshot. Coffee has been finding it difficult to concentrate at school and will get into fights with his peers and will often stare off in a trance-like state. This would be PTSD because it was 2 months ago. Now, if that was 1 month ago, we'd be looking more at acute. So then it'll lead us into our conduct and mood style disorders. So our conduct and mood style, so we have oppositional defiant disorder. And this is a pattern of angry or irritable mood, argumentative or defiant behavior, or vindictiveness, at least 6 months, evidenced by 4 or more symptoms from any of the following categories. So again, it's just a disarray of all of these. And this is more of a childhood diagnosis. And it must be against one person of authority and not a sibling. So oppositional defiant disorder was where the person is defiant towards authority because they don't like being told what to do. So the criteria that we're looking at here is angry or irritable. So they often lose their temper. They're often touchy or easily annoyed. And they're often angry and resentful towards other people. The argumentative or defiant behavior is when the person often argues with authority figures, and for children and adolescents with adults, and often actively defies or refuses to comply with requests from authority figures or rules. So somebody will be talking to them, they just won't give a crap. They'll just be like, screw you, I'm going to do what I want anyway. Get the heck away from me. They deliberately annoy other people just for the sake of being able to do so, and they know how to do so. And they'll often blame others for their mistakes or misbehaviors. So let's say somebody does something that makes them look negatively. They may look and say, it's not my fault, it's X, Y, or Z. This is what the person's doing. It's their fault. They didn't explain it well enough. This is stupid. I studied this. It didn't work. Type deal. Nothing's ever your fault. Vindictiveness. So they have been spiteful or vindictive at least twice in the past 6 months, meaning they just do things to spite people. They will steal from somebody. They'll cuss somebody out. They'll push someone down. They'll manipulate and finesse someone to get their way. And the disturbance in the behavior is associated with the stress in individual or others in his or her immediate social context. So we'll have our families, we'll have our peer groups, we'll have colleagues, we'll have neighbors, sports teams, etc. And we're just defiant towards it. And it's just people don't want us around because we're always defying and just creating problems. And the behavior does not occur exclusively during the course of a psychotic episode or during substance use or any other mental health episode. And the person does not meet criteria for disruptive mood dysregulation. And remember, disruptive mood dysregulation is where they're angry the majority of the time, at least 3 times per week over a span of a year. Which then leads us into conduct disorder. And the best way to quantify this is that conduct disorder is how someone conducts themselves, and it can create itself into a personality disorder. So conduct disorder is a repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others or major age-appropriate social norms or rules are violated. So you have to have at least 3 of the following 15 that occurred in the past 12 months and at least 1 in the last 6 months. And you may be thinking, it's not a lot of criteria, but the criteria for this is a lot more extreme and a lot wilder to witness. So the first category is aggression to people and animals. So they often bully or threaten or intimidate people around them. They'll just say things to create power and control within their situation, or they'll initiate physical fights with other people out of nowhere. Someone looks at them the wrong way, someone tells them something and they don't like it, they're like, screw you, I'm just going to beat the hell out of you. So that is why the criteria is a little less open and a little more present within that. So they'll use weapons that cause physical harm to others. They'll use bats, guns, bricks, broken glass, knives, etc. to harm people. They just walk around, do whatever they feel is necessary to get their needs met in the best way that they know how. And they've experienced physical harm to others. They're physically cruel to everyone. They will just do anything to get their hands on some type of control and do whatever they feel is necessary and manipulate people to make it happen. They have physical episodes of being cruel to animals. They'll torture animals, kill animals, or experiment on animals, which makes it dangerous to be around them. So they have stolen while confronting a person. They'll mug someone, they'll snatch purses, they'll put someone at gunpoint, and leads to very, very different behaviors. And they can find themselves trying to force someone to have sex with them, or if they feel rejected with someone trying to have sex with them, that they will become aggressive towards them, which could lead us to be able to predicate any of the other following symptoms. So within that, we then have destruction of property, which is when someone is deliberately engaged in a fire setting with the intention of causing serious damage to people and or others, or just the property in general. So let's say they're like, oh, I just want to be a pyro and set this building on fire. So then they just commit that crime. And they're deliberately destroyed other people's properties. So let's say I walk up to a car, bash the window in and say, I don't care, they did this to me, or they deserve this because of this reason. Or they steal things from people, destroy things, and deceitfulness or theft is the next category. So this is where they've broken into someone else's house, car, or building. They lied to obtain goods or favors or manipulated people to get what they want. Say I need money, I walk up to somebody and say, wow, I need this amount of money to get food, or my car is broken down, can you come help me? And then I hurt that person or steal from them or con them into doing whatever I feel is necessary to get my needs met. I've run away from home overnight at least twice while living in a parental figure or have a guardian, or once without a lengthy period of time without returning. So I don't like being around people. I just manipulate people and view them as pawns within my life. And I'm often truant from school, and I don't really care about being in school. But that one has to exist before the age of 13. So this isn't me being defined because I'm in the adolescent years. This is me being defined because I just don't give a crap about school. And the disturbance has caused a clinically significant impact on my life. And if I'm 18 years or older, I would have antisocial personality disorder. So like I was saying, best way to remember conduct disorder is it's the way I conduct myself and can turn into a personality disorder. Okay, so the first question we're looking at is a social worker at a community mental health clinic is meeting with a mother and her 9-year-old son, who is having behavioral issues at school for the past 6 months. The mother reports that her son has been sent home multiple times for pushing other children while waiting in lines, will run around the classroom when completed with his work, and interrupt other people while they are talking. The client reports that he does not like other people and feels like they are too slow and need to stay out of his way. What diagnosis best explains the boy's behavior? When you have your answer, type the word cool into the chat. And if you need more time, just type time into the chat. Okay, so I will open the polls right now. And if you need more time, feel free to take it. I'll slap 25 more seconds. Okay. So the majority think it's A, some think it's C, some think it is D. So let's see. Social worker, community mental health clinic, meeting with a mother and 9-year-old son. That's not supposed to be right. Who's having behavioral issues for the past 6 months. Remember, always when diagnosing, length of time is super important. The mother reports that her son has been sent home multiple times for pushing other children while waiting in line. Will run around and will interrupt people when talking. And the child reports that he feels like everyone's slow. So let's look into this. And remember, ADHD is when they lack patience, not being able to sit still, distractible, and will leave their seat when it is not appropriate. And then disruptive mood regulation. When a child has tempers and anger throughout the majority of the day, 3 times per week, or 12 And then this is 6 months or longer. Conduct disorder is doing deviant, vindictive acts towards people, as well as breaking societal and legal norms. And an oppositional defiant disorder is when the person is being defiant towards people with authority and doing things despite others for fun. So let's look at it. So it's not going to be oppositional defiant disorder because the person is not being defiant towards anyone of authority. They're having an inability to respect others, stay on task, roaming around their classroom, talkative, and they feel like people just need to stay out of their way. Which then leads us to rule out conduct disorder because the child, yes, is like sent home for pushing kids, but they're waiting in line, so they have a lack of patience, not able to stay on task, and interrupting people because they feel like they're going too slow, which then leads us into is it ADHD or disruptive mood regulation disorder. So the child's not angry by any means. They just feel like they want to go fast. They're not able to really stay on task. They're not able to maximize and mobilize and stay within what they're good at. So the best thing to keep in mind is that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And this one would probably be impulsivity and hyperactivity. But the thing to keep in mind is that they're not being angry, deceitful, or defying anyone. They're more or less just like self-sabotaging their own efforts and making sure that they're the center of what they would like to do. So that's the answer there. So question 2. Social worker in an outpatient clinic is completing an initial assessment with a 16-year-old boy who reports feeling off. The boy reports that he finds it difficult to fit in with his peers and he prefers to be by himself. The boy reports that his interest in activities fluctuates and he finds it difficult to stay motivated to continue doing one thing. The boy states that since entering high school, that he finds it difficult to sleep at night, with periods of staying up multiple days in a row without realizing it. What is the best diagnosis for this? Fine. A, major depressive disorder. B, persistent depressive disorder. C, generalized anxiety disorder. D, bipolar 2 disorder. When you have your answer, type the word orange into the chat. Insane in the membrane, ain't got no brain. opening the polls. Seems like this question kind of took you guys a little bit more trickier, I would say. If you need more time, just type time in the chat. Okay. Yeah, feel free. This question is kind of doesn't have a lot of info, but has enough info for you to slap it right on its legs. Just okay. So I'll give 20 more seconds because I notice there's a decent amount of people who haven't answered, and I just want to make sure that everyone gets their vote and voice heard. And pull slap shut. So it's a tie between C and D, and someone thinks it is B. Let's look at it. So, social worker in an outpatient clinic completing an initial assessment with a 16-year-old boy who reports feeling off. The boy reports that he finds it difficult to fit in with his peers and he prefers to be by himself, so some isolation there. The boy reports that his interest in activity fluctuates and he finds it difficult to stay motivated on doing one thing. So some lack of interest on things that he might have enjoyed previously and is switching to try and fulfill that. The boy states that since entering high school that he finds it difficult to sleep at night with periods of staying up multiple days in a row. So some sleep disturbances there. So what is the best diagnosis? So we have some lack of relating to people, decreased of interest, and sleep disturbance. as well as isolation. So within that, bipolar 2 would be ruled out because there's no real mania type symptomology here, besides him trying to stay multiple days in a row. But that doesn't always quantify hypomania and or mania because there's no increased activity in things. There's no real distractibility. There's some sleep disturbance there. There's no forced talkativeness. There's no engagement in things that could be risky. So then that leads us to generalized anxiety disorder. But from what we're seeing here, it's not him really being anxious. It's him feeling more depressed about his symptoms and situation. So then it begs the question, is it major depressive disorder or persistent depressive disorder? So I kind of was tricky here with the length of time since starting high school. Since the person is 16 years old, people typically enter at 14 years old. So MDD, 2 weeks or longer, and 1 year or longer. And I say 1 year because it's a child or adolescent, but it's 2 years or more for adults. So since he is a child, has it been going on for 2 weeks or more, or has it been going on for at least a year? So it's been going on for at least a year. So it's persistent depressive disorder. So I kind of threw a wrench in the situation, but he's having isolation, decreased interest in things that he used to enjoy, and some sleep disturbances. So that is what we're looking at there. Any questions on that one? And if you don't, just type no into the chat. Okay. Question number 3. A social worker is completing an intake with a 15-year-old high school student. The client was referred by their teacher for school truancy, cheating off of other students, and will often steal from other students' lockers. The client most recently got into a fistfight with someone because they looked at him the wrong way. The most likely diagnosis for this client is A. Conduct disorder, B. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, C. Oppositional defiant disorder, D. Generalized anxiety disorder. And when you have your answer, type the word tough into the chat. Okay, opening the polls. Twenty more seconds. Polls are slapped shut. So the majority think it's A. Some think it is C. So let's look at it. So, client completing intake. 15-year-old whippersnapper. Referred for school truancy, cheating off of other students, and will steal from other students' lockers. The client most recently got into a fist fight with somebody because they looked at them for the wrong way. So let's look at this. Conduct disorder is, remember, when they do deviant or deceitful actions towards others, they will deliberately break rules, initiate fights, steal, and have no disregard for societal norms or other people. And then disruptive mood regulation, when the person has anger almost every day and it affects their ability to connect with others 3 times per week for at least 12 months. Oppositional mind disorder, being defiant towards people of authority and not being able to follow rules, and then generalized anxiety disorder, 6 months or longer of irritability, excessive worry, sleep disturbance, etc. So definitely not GAD because there's no anxiety. There's some irritability and feistiness, but definitely not anxiety ridden. It's not going to be oppositional defiant disorder because they're not defiant towards people of authority. They're just defiant towards everyone and doing deviant actions to get what their needs met and fighting with people. So, is this disruptive mood dysregulation disorder or is this more of a conduct disorder? So, yes, they're angry, but it's deeper than them just simply being angry out of proportion of what is normally expected. They're getting away from school, they're cheating off of people, they're stealing, they're starting fights. So, we're looking at how this person conducts themselves. So, it's going to be more or less conduct disorder. And if this person was over the age of 18, remember, it would be antisocial personality disorder. Question 4. A social worker in a family agency is meeting with a father and his 7-year-old daughter that has been struggling in school. The father reports that his daughter's teacher has been finding it difficult to engage with her and that she feels like the daughter may have a learning disability. The father does not understand since daughter communicates well at home with other family members. The father reports that his daughter finds it difficult to communicate with strangers, but with time warms up to them. The daughter is not engaged with the social worker. Which diagnosis best explains the daughter's behavior? A. Selective mutism. B. Social anxiety disorder. C. Generalized anxiety disorder. D. Oppositional defiant disorder. And when you have your answer, type the word coffee into the chat. Okay, so I will open the polls. All right, let's see. Majority think it's A, some think it is B. So, social worker in a family agency, meeting with a father and 7-year-old daughter, struggling in school. The father reports that his daughter has been finding it difficult to engage with her and she feels like daughter may have a learning disability. Father does not understand since communicates well with other family members. The father reports finds it difficult to talk with strangers but warms up with time. What is the diagnosis? So here, selective mutism is when the child is selective in the environment that they will communicate in, they will be social in some situations but antisocial in others. Social anxiety disorder is when someone is worried about being judged by those around them in different social situations. Generalized anxiety disorder, 6 or more, and the person is irritable, sleep disturbance, flight of idea, and restless, oppositional defiant disorder. Person is defiant towards people of authority, do not follow rules. So, oppositional defiant disorders can be an easy rule out. Generalized anxiety disorder will also be. So then that begs the question, is this girl social in some situations and others antisocial? Or is she antisocial in the majority of situations for fear that people are going to judge her or that she's going to mess up? So here we're going to be looking at selective mutism because she is selecting which environment she's going to be social in, such as being around her friends, family, and people that she's comfortable around, and then being antisocial in environments where it can be actually detrimental to them, such as school. Fifth question. A school social worker is meeting with an 8-year-old boy who is referred by his teacher for disrupting class. The teacher reports that the boy has been throwing things at other students, does not listen to the teacher, and does not leave other students alone during classwork. The boy reports that he does not see why his teacher blames him for everything since other students aren't perfect either. The boy reports that he hates school and that he wishes he did not have to go. What is the most likely diagnosis for this boy? Oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, explosive mood disorder. When you have your answer, type the word anger into the chat. Okay, so I will open the polls. 30 more seconds. Poll slapped immediately shut. Majority think it's C, some think it is A. So, school social worker is meeting with an 8-year-old boy who's referred by a teacher for disrupting class. So the teacher reports the boy has been throwing things at other students, does not listen, and does not leave anyone alone during class work. So some type of defiance. And the boy reports that he does not see why his teacher blames him for everything, since other students aren't perfect either. So the ability to take blame for what they do. And the boy reports that he hates school and that he does not wish to keep going. So oppositional defiant disorder. So defiant towards people authority. Blames others for their misbehavior. Loses temper and deliberately annoys others. Conduct disorder. Deviant / deceitful behavior and does not have a disregard or does not have a regard for rules or other people. Disruptive mood dysregulation, excessive anger for the majority of the days, exhibits physical and or verbal aggression. Reaction is beyond what is normally expected. Explosive mood disorder. Still made this up. So no one went with explosive mood and no one went with conduct. So looking back at our question, he's throwing things at the teacher and other people, does not listen, annoying people, and is not able to take blame for his actions. So he has some aggression and anger, but it's not beyond what is normally expected, and it's not for our near every day. So we're going to be looking at oppositional defiant disorder, where he is defiant towards people of authority, blames other people for their misbehavior, losing their temper, and deliberately annoying others. So that is the correct answer there. Any questions about that? So, do you guys want to end there, or do you want me to type up one more question? That was tricky, but I got it right. Thank you. Yeah, it is kind of tricky. Good job. What would you like to see? One more. One more. Okay. All right, let's roll. All right. So the social worker, family, instances, that the father and their 10-year-old son who has been having aggressive behavior towards various family members. Father reports that their son is very angry and anxious whenever his brother is around. Father reports that his brother is the main person who watches him, that he does not understand why the son does not get along with him better. One reports he just does not like his uncle and would prefer to spend more time with his friends. Boy appears anxious and overwhelmed when speaking in session. What is the most likely diagnosis for this line? Oops. Generalized anxiety disorder. Post-traumatic disorder. Mood dysregulation disorder, or separation anxiety disorder. And when you have your answer, type the word boom into the chat. Okay, opening the polls now. Oops. I think I want to switch. It's 30 more seconds. Five seconds. So it's a tie between A, C, and D. All right, let's see. All right, so a social worker at a family agency, meeting with a 10-year-old son and a father, being aggressive towards other family members. The father reports her son becomes very anxious when his brother is around. Father reports his brother is the main person who watches him and he does not understand why he doesn't get along with him better. And the boy reports that he just does not like his uncle and would prefer to spend more time with his friends. He appears anxious and overwhelmed with speaking in session. So there's no length of time, which makes it very, very difficult. But key thing here is he reports that he just doesn't like him and would prefer to spend time with friends. So that would mean it's not mood dysregulation disorder because that'd be excessive anger out of nowhere. You're just angry without a proportion of the situation. And there's no evidence of that here. Yes, they're angry towards people, but it's only one person in particular, not everybody. And they're not angry all of the time, which then leads us to generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, or separation anxiety disorder. So with this, it can be kind of tricky. So separation would be great distress when separated from caregiver, fear of losing caregiver, or something bad happening to them or caregiver. Post-traumatic stress disorder, when someone experiences something traumatic and will be triggered by reminders, negative mood, nightmares, avoidance of particular situations, etc. Generalized anxiety disorder, irritability, sleep disturbance, muscle tension, reaction to situation. Whoops. So reaction to situation. Flight of idea. And easily fatigued. So it's kind of a thick question here. So separated from father, yes. Doesn't like being around uncle, but would prefer to be with his friends. So separation anxiety disorder would not entirely fit here because yes, they become distressed when away from their caregiver, but here they're not saying that they would rather be around the caregiver, that they would rather just be around their friends and that they don't like the uncle. And they don't fear that something bad's going to happen to their father or to them when they're away. So then is it post-traumatic stress disorder or generalized anxiety disorder? So remember, they have to hear about a traumatic event, they have to witness a traumatic event, or they have to go through a traumatic event. Yes, this person does not like being around their uncle, become very distressed when around them. They have a negative mood, but that doesn't mean that they have negative mood all of the time. And this person's become anxious and overwhelmed when speaking. So with this, the correct answer here is going to be generalized anxiety disorder because we can't assume that this person's been through a traumatic event or that they're becoming hyper aroused around this situation. So the best answer here with the information given would be generalized anxiety disorder. Why? Because you only need one of the criteria for it. And they're becoming greatly distressed and irritable and on edge when in session. So that is the best answer there. Kind of thick question though, with multiple layers, not a lot of information, and a lot of directions that it could have possibly went in. Any questions around that? No. Okay, so with that, I will end the recording.